Hello, I'm Treasurov, and today we're going to talk about something incredibly important, yet often overlooked until it's too late: our bones. Now, when we think of bone health, we often picture our grandparents worrying about fractures and osteoporosis. But the truth is, building and maintaining strong bones is a lifelong project. It starts in childhood and continues right through our adult lives. What you do today, right now, will have a profound impact on the strength of your skeleton for decades to come. So, whether you're in your 20s or your 60s, this is for you. We all know that exercise, particularly weight-bearing exercise, is brilliant for our bones. It puts them under a healthy amount of stress, which stimulates the cells that build new bone. But what about diet? It plays an absolutely crucial role, and it goes far beyond just getting enough calcium. The foods we eat can either be the building blocks for a resilient skeleton, or surprisingly, they can actively work against it. The interplay between nutrients, our gut, and our bones is a fascinating and complex dance, and getting the steps right is key. That brings me to the core of what we'll be exploring today. I want to shine a light on some very common everyday foods and drinks that you might be consuming regularly without realizing they could be secretly undermining your bone strength. It's not about demonizing these items or suggesting you ban them entirely. Rather, it's about understanding the science behind how they affect your body, so you can make informed choices. The key, as with so many things in health, is moderation and balance. So, let's investigate the hidden culprits lurking in your kitchen. Let's start with something many of us enjoy as a treat: a fizzy drink. Whether it's a classic cola or a fruity pop, that satisfying fizz can be hard to resist. However, when it comes to our bones, particularly with cola-type drinks, there's a potential problem, and it's called phosphoric acid. This is an additive used to give colas their tangy flavor and to slow the growth of mold and bacteria. The issue is that our bodies strive to maintain a very tight balance between calcium and phosphorus. When you introduce a large amount of phosphoric acid into your system, your body may draw calcium from your bones to restore that delicate equilibrium. Over time, if this happens repeatedly, it can lead to a gradual leaching of calcium from your skeleton, potentially weakening your bones and increasing the risk of osteoporosis later in life. Several large-scale observational studies have pointed towards a link between high cola consumption and lower bone mineral density, especially in women. It's a subtle, slow-moving process, one you wouldn't notice day to day, but the cumulative effect over years could be significant. It's a classic example of a small, seemingly harmless habit having long-term consequences. Now you might be thinking, what about the sugar-free versions? They must be better, right? Well, not necessarily. While you're avoiding the empty calories and sugar spike, diet colas still contain phosphoric acid. So, from a bone health perspective, they present the very same problem. The issue isn't the sugar, it's the acid. So, while an occasional can is unlikely to cause any harm, making fizzy colas a daily habit could be a decision your bones will regret in the future. Perhaps swapping it for sparkling water with a slice of lemon could be a better choice more often. Next on our list is an ingredient so ubiquitous we barely even think about it: salt. It's in almost every processed food, from bread and cereals to soups and sauces, not to mention what we add ourselves at the dinner table. A little bit is essential for our bodies to function correctly, helping to transmit nerve impulses and contract muscles. However, the vast majority of us in the Western world consume far more than we need, and this excess can have a direct and detrimental effect on our bone density. The mechanism is quite straightforward, really. Our kidneys are responsible for filtering our blood and getting rid of waste products, including excess sodium. As it turns out, the amount of calcium your body excretes through urine is directly linked to the amount of sodium it's trying to get rid of. Essentially, for every 2,300 milligrams of sodium you excrete, you lose about 40 milligrams of calcium along with it. If your diet is consistently high in salt, this constant drain of calcium can start to add up significantly. This means that the calcium you've carefully consumed through dairy, leafy greens, or supplements might not even get a chance to be incorporated into your bones. Instead, it's being flushed straight out of your system. Over many years, this can contribute to a net loss of bone mass, leaving you more vulnerable to fractures. The simplest way to combat this is to be more mindful of your salt intake. That means checking labels on packaged foods, where most of our salt intake comes from, and trying to cut back on adding extra salt to your meals. Your bones will thank you for it. For millions of us, the day doesn't truly begin until we've had our morning cup of coffee or tea. Caffeine is the world's most popular psychoactive drug, and we rely on it to feel alert and focused. But what is this daily ritual doing to our skeleton? For years, we've heard warnings that caffeine can be bad for our bones, and there is a kernel of truth to this. High caffeine intake does appear to have a diuretic effect and can interfere with how our bodies handle calcium, albeit in a small way. The science suggests that for every 100 milligrams of caffeine you consume, that's roughly one average cup of coffee, you lose about 6 milligrams of calcium. On its own, this is a very small amount and not something to be overly concerned about. The problem arises when two conditions are met. Firstly, a very high caffeine intake, say 4 or more strong cups of coffee a day, and secondly, an inadequate dietary intake of calcium. If you're not consuming enough calcium in the first place, then even a small regular loss can become significant over time. However, it's not all bad news for coffee and tea lovers. The research here is quite nuanced. Some studies even suggest that moderate consumption might not be harmful, and in the case of tea, which contains beneficial plant compounds called flavonoids, it might even be protective for bones. The key takeaway is balance. If you enjoy your caffeine, there's no need to panic. Just ensure you're meeting your daily calcium needs. A simple fix, like adding a splash of milk to your coffee or tea, can be enough to offset the minor calcium loss it causes. Let's talk about fat. Specifically, saturated fat. We find this in foods like fatty cuts of meat, sausages, butter, cheese, and, many commercially baked goods like cakes and biscuits. For decades, saturated fat has been in the spotlight for its role in heart disease, but emerging evidence suggests it might also be a foe to our bones. Studies have begun to draw a link between diets high in saturated fat and lower bone mineral density, particularly in men. The exact reasons are still being investigated, but there are a few compelling theories. One leading hypothesis is a process called saponification, which is essentially soap formation. It sounds a bit strange, but what happens is that when there's an excess of fat in your intestine, the fatty acids can bind with calcium. This chemical reaction forms a waxy, insoluble compound, a calcium soap, which your body cannot absorb. So, the calcium that should be on its way to your bloodstream to be delivered to your bones is instead bound up and excreted as waste. It's a fascinating, if slightly unappetizing, example of how different nutrients can interact in our gut. Furthermore, a diet high in processed foods and saturated fats is often, by its very nature, low in the essential vitamins and minerals that bones crave, such as magnesium, potassium, and vitamin K. It creates a double whammy effect. Not only are you potentially blocking calcium absorption, but you're also displacing more nutrient-dense foods from your diet. So, while enjoying a bacon sandwich or a piece of cake on occasion is perfectly fine, a diet consistently dominated by these foods could be silently hampering your body's ability to build and maintain a strong, healthy skeleton. Now, this next category might seem a bit counterintuitive, as it involves some incredibly healthy foods. I'm talking about compounds called oxalates and phytates. These are naturally occurring substances found in many plant-based foods. Oxalates, for example, are abundant in things like spinach, rhubarb, and beetroot greens. Phytates, or phytic acid, are primarily found in the bran or hull of whole grains, seeds, nuts, and legumes. Both of these compounds are sometimes referred to as anti-nutrients, which sounds rather alarming. The reason for this label is that both oxalates and phytates have the ability to bind to minerals, including our all-important calcium, in the digestive tract. Just like with saturated fats, this binding action can form insoluble complexes, which prevents the calcium from being absorbed into your bloodstream. So, you might be eating a large spinach salad, thinking you're getting a good dose of calcium, but a significant portion of that calcium is being locked up by the oxalates present in the spinach itself, rendering it unavailable to your body. However, and this is a very important point, this does not mean you should avoid these foods. The benefits of eating spinach, whole grains, and legumes far outweigh the potential negative effects of these compounds. This only becomes a potential issue for individuals who have a very low overall calcium intake and rely heavily on high oxalate or high phytate foods as their primary source. For most people with a varied and balanced diet that includes good sources of calcium like dairy or fortified alternatives, the impact of oxalates and phytates on overall bone health is minimal, and not something to worry about. Finally, let's discuss alcohol. Many of us enjoy a glass of wine with dinner or a beer with friends, and in moderation, that's generally considered acceptable for overall health. However, when consumption becomes heavy and chronic, the effects on your skeleton can be particularly damaging. Alcohol can wreak havoc on your bones through several different mechanisms, making it a significant risk factor for osteoporosis and fractures. It's a direct toxic effect that disrupts the delicate balance of bone remodeling. Firstly, excessive alcohol intake directly poisons the osteoblasts. These are the specialist cells responsible for building new bone tissue. It slows them down and impairs their function, meaning you're not forming new bone as efficiently as you should be. At the same time, heavy drinking can increase levels of certain hormones like cortisol and parathyroid hormone, which in turn can stimulate the activity of osteoclasts, the cells that break down bone. So you're slowing bone formation while potentially speeding up bone resorption, a recipe for weaker bones. On top of this direct cellular damage, alcohol abuse interferes with your body's ability to absorb and use key bone-building nutrients. It can damage the lining of the stomach and intestines, impairing the absorption of calcium. It also affects the liver, which plays a crucial role in converting vitamin D into its active form, a hormone that is absolutely essential for calcium absorption. Without adequate active vitamin D, even a calcium-rich diet won't do you much good. So, while a single drink is not a concern, consistent heavy drinking is a serious threat to the long-term health of your bones. So, there we have it. From fizzy drinks to salt, caffeine to alcohol, it's clear that what we eat and drink can have a profound and sometimes surprising impact on the health of our skeleton. The purpose of this journey wasn't to create a list of forbidden foods, but to arm you with knowledge. Understanding these mechanisms allows you to be more mindful. The key message, as always, is one of balance and moderation. A diet that is rich in calcium from sources like dairy, fortified plant milks, and leafy greens, and sufficient in vitamin D from sunlight and oily fish, provides the fundamental building blocks for strong bones at any age. Think of your dietary habits as a bank account for your bones. The foods we've discussed today, when consumed in excess, act like regular withdrawals. A healthy, balanced diet represents the deposits. To keep your account healthy, you need to ensure your deposits consistently outweigh your withdrawals. This is true whether you are 25 and building your peak bone mass or 65 and working to preserve it. It's never too early, and it's certainly never too late to start making bone-smart choices. I encourage you to take a moment this week to reflect on your own diet. Are there any small, simple swaps you could make? Perhaps replacing that second daily cola with water, or being more conscious of the salt in processed foods. Regular check-ins on your habits and conversations with your doctor about your bone health are powerful tools. By taking these proactive steps, you are investing in a stronger, more resilient future for yourself, one where you can remain active and independent for many years to come. Thank you for watching.